Hello everyone, how are you all? I'm doing well. I'm Nupur. Welcome everybody to my YouTube channel, Nature at the Very Core of Science. I'm very much interested in the US history, posting a couple of those interesting facts which happened at that time when Great Depression affected worldwide and also our United States. And I'm very intrigued to know what happened to the blacks at that time and how the Great Depression affected the blacks. The beginning with the crash of the stock market in 1929. So the Great Depression descended upon America. This is not the first time that depression has affected America. There had been brief depressions in the past also, but this one was much more severe. It superseded anything which we came across. Lasting at least 10 years or until the start of World War II, some 13 million Americans were unemployed. And unemployment was in its peak. Almost overnight, America became a nation of bread lines and soup kitchens. Now, if the Great Depression was hard on white Americans, it was especially hard on blacks. Because by that time, the segregation and all those things have happened. So blacks are already in a very miserable condition. So by the early 1930s, some 25% of black workers were unemployed and on government relief. The numbers were particularly high in the South. About 65% of blacks in Atlanta, Georgia, were without jobs at the Depression's height. Like in Birmingham, Alabama, almost 75% of those on relief were black. In the North, the numbers were not so high, but cities like Detroit could report that a third of its residents on relief were black. Now, African Americans suffered terribly from job discrimination during these years. Last hired and first hired became their slogan. It's a popular slogan at that time, and in large cities like New York and Chicago, blacks organized cooperatives to ease the burden. Now, as we know that the cooperative is an organization where profits and losses are shared by all its members. So they formed such groups as the Colored Merchants Association and bought food and other commodities in large volumes to get the lowest price. Not only that, they also boycotted stores that had mostly black shoppers but few black employees. So as bad as the Great Depression was for African Americans, their plight in reality was not much worse than it had been during the boom years of the 1920s. So this decade, referred to by such names as the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age, the Lawless Decade, and the Era of Wonderful Nonsense. So what was the specialty of these years? These years basically represented the financial stability and gaiety for many white Americans. Most blacks, however, didn't share in this euphoria. To them, as one unemployed African American pointed out in the 1930s, the Great Depression never happened. It was already so bad that it can't make anything worse. Somebody told that the best a black man could hope for was to be a janitor or a shoeshine boy. Whether it was the 1920s or the 1930s and the Great Depression, it mattered little to them. It only became official, like the Depression, to African American workers when they observed that the unemployment rates increased, skyrocketed. Writer Langston Hughes may have summed it up the best when he said, "The Depression brought everybody down a peg or two, and the Negroes had but few pegs to fall." Now, question is that how depression affected blacks, even if it was nothing new to them. So the blacks basically benefited some during the Depression years from President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs. The New Deal was the president's broad plan to put Americans to work to end the Depression. It was made up of a number of agencies, and out of that, one was the Civilian Conservation Corps, in short CCC. This one provided gainful employment for thousands of young men and women. It included a black division also, and that employed 200,000 young African Americans. The CCC resembled a voluntary army in that its workers wore uniforms and were commanded by army personnel. The black CCC workers, among their other tasks, helped build campgrounds, roads, bridges, and dams. Many young Americans, both black and white, received good food, adequate pay, and invaluable training that helped them to find other jobs after the Depression ended. And the history says that about 1 million African Americans were employed by President Roosevelt's Work Projects Administration, which is in short WPM. And they used to perform jobs ranging from the secretarial to the artistic. Some 64,000 young blacks found work with the National Youth Administration, NYA, while others, such as writer Zora Neale Hurston, got their start with help from the Federal Writers Project. So, in addition, President Roosevelt appointed an unofficial black cabinet to advise him on the problems of the African Americans. This group included Mary McLeod Bethune, who later founded Bethune-Cookman College for Blacks in Dayton Beach, Florida. During the Depression, Bethune headed the black division of the National Youth Administration. Mr. Bethune was well known as an educator, and not only in the United States, in many places he had his educational institutions. He is a great educator. Unemployment and poverty were not the only problems African Americans faced during the Great Depression. They also had to contend with attacks by angry and frustrated whites, who seemed to take solace in the beatings and lynchings of innocent blacks. Incidents of lynching had actually declined in the 1920s, but they rose again during the Depression years. In 1935, a lynching occurred on an average of 1 every 3 weeks. Here, I want to mention one historical incident that took place in Alabama in 1931. It's a notorious one, and it exemplifies the racism blacks faced during the Depression. And it had nothing to do with lynching, by the way, but rather with the complete lack of justice at the time for African Americans. In May of that year, a freight train pulled into station in the small town of Scottsboro. 9 young black hobos traveling the rails in search of work occupied the boxcars along with a number of white men. As soon as the train stopped, a fight broke out. When local sheriff's deputies arrived to break up the melee, 2 young white women appeared from somewhere, claiming they had been raped by the 9 blacks. The women, both of questionable reputation, told stories that this happened, that happened, and that were full of contradictions. Nothing could be proved. But nevertheless, 8 of the 9 blacks, who came to be known as the Scottsboro Nine or Scottsboro Boys, were tried and sentenced to death. What an injustice. The 9th one, that means one who was not tried, he basically escaped the death penalty because he was only 13 years old. None of the young blacks were ever executed, but at least half of them served long prison terms. To be honest about that, this story was just reminding me of the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Remember how the legal or judicial system, the jurors and everybody, they always used to feel that the black people are the criminal minded, and any white woman, they are just of a lowest, characteristic attitude. They can just even make a story and the jurors will believe because she's a white woman, and the black person is tried and sentenced to harsh jail time. So this is nothing new, but surely Scottsboro Nine or Scottsboro Boys, that has become a historical event which happened during the Depression time. Thank you for listening. If you comment, I will be happy to answer.